There you go.
All right, thank you everyone for joining us this hopefully very sunny where you are Friday morning. Um, I just want to begin by acknowledging that I'm calling in from the unceded ancestral and unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, colonially known as West Vancouver. And I recognize that a lot of us are probably calling in from different regions, so that in today's session, I hope that we can all honor elders past, present, and future from all nations and traditional territories. The land and waters colonially named British Columbia are home to over 290,000 for Indigenous peoples and more than 200 distinct First Nations. And I encourage you all to add in the chat where you're calling in from today, and also throw your name in there so we know who's all here today. Next slide, please. So in today's session, I have the honor of presenting our wonderful panelists. So I'll give some brief introductions. We'll go over some of the learning outcomes that we hope you can all walk away with after our call. And then we're going to dive into a bit of a high-level overview of the BC Retrofit Accelerator, and then dive into what are the basics around energy benchmarking, and then also how to access the BC NPHA benchmarking services. Then we have an opportunity to highlight what that looks like in action with the Affordable Housing Society. We'll wrap up with some key takeaways and then dive into Q&A. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, I encourage you to throw them into the chat. I will be keeping those, I'll keep a track on those throughout our presentations, and then we'll revisit those at the end of the presentation. Next slide, please. So my name's Chanel Feller. I'm the Energy Project Advisor at AMA, Aboriginal Housing Management Association. With us today is Harrison Marr. Harrison is a building energy specialist at BC NPHA. He has a background in environmental sciences and clean energy development. He uses this background and past experience coaching to support nonprofit housing providers throughout the energy retrofit process. As well, we have Khalid Isa. He's the building energy analyst at BC NPHA, and he's a certified measurement and verification professional with a mechanical engineering background, specializing in energy management and data analytics. At BC NPHA, he empowers the nonprofit housing sector across BC by leading energy tracking and benchmarking efforts by using the Energy Star Portfolio Manager. As well, today with us is Glenn Hawking. He's currently the Chief Operating Officer of Affordable Housing Societies, a role that he's held for the past 2.5 years. He's responsible for overseeing the operations of more than 60 properties, managing both asset performance and tenant relations. Prior to joining Affordable Housing Societies, Glenn worked in the seniors care sector, where he oversaw the operations of 10 care facilities across the Lower Mainland. So we're hoping to, by the end of today's session, you'll have a better understanding of what energy benchmarking is, as well as how energy benchmarking can assist with portfolio and building improvement decision making, and ultimately just have a better understanding of how BC NPHA's benchmarking processes operate and how to access these services. I'll pass it over to Harrison to give you an overview of the BC Retrofit Accelerator.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Chanel. So, as mentioned, my name is Harrison, and I'm a building energy specialist at the BC Nonprofit Housing Association. And before we get into the bulk of the presentation, I'm going to briefly speak about some of the programs and services that BC NPHA and AMA offer through the BC Retrofit Accelerator. So the BC Retrofit Accelerator is funded by Natural Resources Canada, Metro Vancouver Regional District, the Roberg Foundation, and the Zero Emissions Innovation Center, or ZEEC. And it supports a smooth transition of existing buildings to net zero carbon emissions, which is in alignment with provincial and local government climate action targets. The BCRA uses a zero overtime model, aligning decarbonization upgrades with major renewal projects to minimize costs while improving the comfort and climate resilience of buildings. And there are 4 main categories of the built environment that the BC Retrofit Accelerator operates in. These are commercial buildings, nonprofit housing, market rentals, and residential stratas. And as we can see here, BC NPHA and AMA are the member supports in the nonprofit housing sector for this program. Next slide, please. So through the BC Retrofit Accelerator, BC NPHA and AMA offer societies and co-ops a variety of services, including capital planning support, assistance with identifying and applying for various funding and financing opportunities, project management, project coaching, Level 1 ASHRAE type energy audits, and portfolio energy use and benchmarking services, which we'll hear more about today. These services can help create a more holistic planning approach that aligns with capital renewals, manage regulatory risk, and creates healthier and more comfortable spaces for building occupants. The BC Retrofit Accelerator focuses on nonprofit housing providers and/or co-ops with multi-unit residential buildings that are at least 4 stories and have a footprint of at least 600 meters squared. We can help you determine your building's eligibility for the BCRA program. So if this does interest you, please reach out to us. Next slide, please. BC also offers a number of no-cost and low-cost services outside of the BC Retrofit Accelerator, and these are available to all nonprofit housing providers. Our no-cost services include benchmarking, level 1 ASHRAE type energy audits, retrofit coaching, funding accruement support, and post-project support. And we also have a few low-cost services as well, which include building condition assessments, capital planning, and Acori, property management software. Again, these services are available to any and all nonprofit housing providers in BC, so we strongly encourage you to reach out to us if you have any interest in these, or you just would like to learn more about them. Our contact information will be shared at the end of the presentation. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Khaled to dive into the energy benchmarking portion of this presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Harrison. Hi, everyone. Thanks again for joining our webinar today. So for my portion of the presentation on the basics of energy benchmarking, we're going to cover 3 sections. I'm going to start with a quick introduction to the concept of energy benchmarking for buildings. So we'll talk about the most commonly used metric for benchmarking, and how we can use that metric to get a sense of, how energy efficient a building is. Then we'll go over how you can implement energy benchmarking for your building or portfolio, what tools to use, and data requirements to get you started on the process. From there, we'll discuss some of the key benefits of benchmarking, which I think are quite relevant to the nonprofit sector. And then I'll wrap up by telling you a bit more about our benchmarking service at BCMPHA and how you can reach us to support you on your journey to energy benchmark your buildings. Just like Chanel mentioned, from there, I'm going to pass it on to our guest speaker, Mr. Glenn Hawking from Affordable Housing Societies, so he can share his experience with energy benchmarking with BCMPHA. So energy benchmarking in buildings originated as part of a broader effort to improve energy efficiency and transparency in the built environment. And this was particularly in response to growing concerns about climate change and energy consumption. To put things in perspective, buildings in Canada consume about 30% of the country's total energy use. And that figure is pretty close for buildings in BC as well. And there's a saying that you can't improve what you don't measure. And building energy use data, especially for residential building, is not something that is easy to come by. So to help guide energy efficiency improvements and greenhouse gas reduction, benchmarking became an important tool for everyone, from building owners to municipalities and governments around the world. So when we talk about energy benchmarking, we're really talking about 2 main components. The first is measuring a building's energy performance. And then the second is assessing how efficiently this energy is being used compared to similar buildings. And again, here, the ultimate goal, of course, is to help identify opportunities for energy savings. So when it comes to the measuring of a building's performance, the most commonly used metric in benchmarking is the energy use intensity, or EUI for short, which really is just the total annual energy used by a building divided by its area. And what that gives us is a gauge for how much energy a building is using per unit area, because if we only look at energy use, then we'll mostly end up seeing that larger buildings use more energy than smaller ones of the same building type. But that doesn't really tell us how effectively those buildings are using their energy. So if we're looking at the example here, building 1 might be using 3 times the amount of energy compared to building 2. So if you're looking to do energy retrofits on one of them, you might be tempted to go with the larger building because it'll save you more energy. But when you look at the per unit area usage, we see that building one has a lower EUI, which really means that it's actually using energy more efficiently than building two. So let's say the retrofit on the larger, more efficient building can get you 10% savings. You could take that budget and apply it to retrofits on the less efficient building, which is two here, and that might get you 35% in energy savings for that building. And what's interesting here is that this could have a bigger impact on your portfolio's overall efficiency. So it's not always clear cut, and this is why it's useful to look at both energy and EUI. So going back to the EUI formula, when we talk about the total annual energy use in a building, we mean all the electricity and gas consumed to operate the building throughout the year. So this includes energy used for heating, cooling, lighting, ventilation, appliances, domestic hot water, the whole gamut. And this energy use is, of course, metered by the utilities. For electricity, that's done in kilowatt hours. So that's what you would see on your BC Hydro bills. For gas, the consumption is measured in gigajoules, which you would find on your FortisBC bills. So if your energy has both electricity and gas, to get the annual total, of course, you want to make sure that you're expressing both using the same measurement units. Here I'm using gigajoules for the total annual energy, but you could very well use kilowatt hours if that's your preference. And all you would do in that case essentially is you would convert the gas from gigajoules to kilowatt hours before adding them up. For reference here, 1 gigajoule is the same as 278 kilowatt hours, so it's about 280 kilowatt hours. And it's enough to drive a car for 500 kilometers. And it's also enough to power an average Canadian household for a week. So it's a sizable amount of energy. Our focus here is, when it comes to the sector, is for residential buildings and specifically multi-unit residential buildings. So when it comes to the utility metering layout, we most commonly find what you see in the figure there in the sketch. One common meter for electricity, and this would serve the common areas or amenities in the building. One common meter for gas, which serves a central heating system. So this could be space heating, domestic hot water, or both. And then each tenant will have their own electric meter. So to get the total use, we need to sum the energy from all three meter categories. And we'll talk a bit more about the options for gathering building energy use data in a few minutes here. So moving now to the building's size measurement. When we're calculating the EUI, we're looking for the building's gross floor area, or GFA. And that's the total area between the exterior walls of the building. So for this zoomed in section of a residential tower, we'll be basically looking at the areas highlighted by the yellow lines for each floor. The GFA is used because it represents the total space being serviced by the building systems. So essentially, it reflects the actual operational footprint of a building. This is why GFAs exclude spaces external to the building, like balconies and patios. The best place to find your building's GFA is from the building's architectural drawings. These usually contain a project summary or statistics table on one of the first pages that will list the GFA of the building. Another good source for GFAs are reports from building condition assessments. So if you've completed an assessment, the building area should be measured and listed in the final report. If you don't have either, and you need a rough estimate, then you could do that using something like Google Maps, which has an area measurement tool in it. But this would be good just for a temporary value. To get a more reliable EUI, you want to rely on one of the more accurate methods. So now that you gathered all this data on your building's annual energy use and floor area, you can come up with an EUI value for your site. So basically here we've completed the measuring portion of energy benchmarking, and you can move on to the next phase, which is the comparison. And really the whole reason behind this comparison, again, is just to get a sense of how energy efficient a building is. So here we're focused on residential buildings in the sector. So of course it's important when benchmarking that the comparison be apples to apples. We don't want to compare residential buildings to say office towers or campuses or hospitals because different building types can have drastically different energy footprints. So making that comparison can lead us to draw the wrong conclusions. So generally speaking, there are three approaches when it comes to making EUI comparisons. You could compare your building's EUI to published benchmarking data sets. One great resource for this type of data in Canada is published by Natural Resources Canada, or NRCan, through their National Energy Use Database. In this data set, you could find energy use and intensity values by sector and province. So it's not limited to the residential sector, and it does retain some locality in its data. It's also based on a combination of household energy use surveys, but they are also supplemented by some energy modeling. So all in all, it provides a good initial metric that you can compare to. Alternatively, you could use a tool dedicated to benchmarking, like Energy Star Portfolio Manager. This is one of the most commonly used tools to energy benchmark buildings. It is free, it's web-based, so all you need to access it basically is an internet browser. The way it works is you create a profile for your building and then add energy use data to it. And this data, of course, cannot be viewed by anyone else on the platform unless you specifically give them access to your building profile. And then what the ESPM does is it compares your building's energy use to a survey-based model. And it gives you a score, or it tells you where your EUI sits compared to the median. There's also something called the ESPM Data Explorer, and there you can have access to anonymize stats on EUIs from thousands of buildings that are on the platform. So the comparisons in those scenarios would be based on real life data from similar buildings or similar building types. So in the case of ESPM, you can't control what others are inputting in terms of energy consumption. The sample is large enough that the median EUI is quite representative of the building type. As a tool, ESPM continues to grow in popularity in Canada. In 2022, there were over 30,500 buildings from throughout the country, with 5,300 buildings from BC. So the first two options are essential if you have only one building and you're looking to gauge its energy efficiency. The third option, I think, is ideal if you have multiple buildings of similar type in your portfolio, because then you could do more of an internally focused benchmarking by ranking your building's energy use intensity. But this still doesn't negate the value from the first two options. Internal benchmarking tells you how your buildings compare to each other, but it doesn't tell you how your portfolio's median EUI compares to similar building types within your region. Another good scenario for using one of the first two options is if you have different building types in your portfolio. Ranking them internally without an internal EUI reference for each subset of building type will not provide you with good insights to action on. So now that we talked about the concept of energy benchmarking for buildings, we're going to take a look at what it takes to implement energy benchmarking. But before I delve into that, I just want to make a few points about the practice itself. Benchmarking tools out there can have a tendency to try and fit buildings into neat predefined boxes, but we all know buildings are quite complex when it comes to energy use trends and are rarely a one-size-fits-all. And that's because there are too many factors that influence energy use, and trying to measure and account for all of them is in most cases just not feasible. So benchmarking can show us where a building stands relative to a larger group of similar buildings, based on the most influential or important factors. But it's just a starting point for understanding the performance. The results still need to be contextualized by what building systems are in place, things like occupant behavior and the age of the building, etc. And this is why I always say use benchmarking as a compass, but you should not use it as a map. With all that said, there are still significant benefits from energy benchmarking that makes the exercise worthwhile. And we are going to look at some of the key ones in a few minutes here. But first, we'll take a look at the implementation piece of energy benchmarking. So say you're interested in benchmarking your building or portfolio. We spoke earlier about where you can find or get information on your building's gross floor area or GFA. So I want to focus a bit more now on the energy data piece, which again, we need along with the building size to come up with the energy use intensity. As we discuss these options, it's important before making a decision on which one to choose is to not view benchmarking as a one and done exercise. It is very much a continuous process, though it's easy to think of it as a one-off event, especially in the case where you don't need to action on the data right away. Ideally, when you benchmark your building, you want to take that information and incorporate it into your decision-making process. So even when the end result is that no further action is needed today, that doesn't mean that no action is needed tomorrow or maybe a year from now. So a crucial part of benchmarking is tracking your energy use on an ongoing basis. One option is to gather a year worth of utility bills and then enter the data in, say, an Excel sheet to track your annual total consumption. So this works okay if you have access to the bills for all the energy meters in your building, including the tenant bills. Of course, this is easier if the site is a duplex, say, or a single detached home. But if you're in a multi-unit residential building and assuming, which is a big assumption in this case, that you have access to all the needed utility bills from the tenants, it does require a lot of manual work that you would have to repeat at least on an annual basis. A better option would be to log onto your online utility accounts and export the annual data that you need for the benchmarking, and then add it to your tracking sheet or file. Of course, here again, if you're in a multi-unit residential building where tenants pay their own utilities, you would still run into the challenge of getting the energy use from all the units. Even if we assume that you have the login to all their accounts, the process once again becomes quite laborious. A good workaround in this case for multi-unit buildings is you could make something like a customer data request to BC Hydro. And what they do there is they aggregate the electricity use for all the tenants and send you a data file with the monthly totals. So all in all, this is a much easier option when you compare it to relying completely on utility bills. And I think it can work okay if your portfolio, if you have a portfolio of say 1 to 5 buildings. But let's say you have a portfolio of 10 or more buildings, or maybe you prefer to not have to export online utility data or request aggregated data every year. That's where a platform like Energy Star Portfolio Manager shines. So earlier we talked about ESPM as a benchmarking tool that helps you see how your building performs compared to a large group of similar buildings on the platform. But where I really think it stands out is in its ability to automate gathering and tracking your energy use data. And we're going to take a quick look now at how that can be done. So with ESPM, you start by creating a free account for your organization. And you can do that right from the platform's homepage. On that same page, you will also find links to online training and how-to guides. So I'm not going to demo how to create an account today for the sake of time, but there are a ton of resources out there, including YouTube videos that can help you familiarize yourself and your team with the process. After you complete the new account form and activate your organization's account, now you can start adding a profile for each of your buildings under this new account. So these building profiles are used to capture property information on them. You know, things like the name of the property, location, square footage, the year it was built, number of units, and so on. And for any required fields that you might not have info on, ESPM usually can provide default values based on estimates from its database of building information. So these building profiles are by no means limited to energy use data. So now that you created an account for your organization or society and added buildings to it, under each building's profile in ESPM, you can start adding energy meters that cover the total usage of the building. And what's really neat about this in ESPM is that in most scenarios for multi-unit buildings, you can connect these meters to BC Hydro and Fortis BC through the platform. And what that does is it enables automated uploads of electricity and gas use data directly to the meters every billing cycle. If you recall the most common metering layout that we talked about a few minutes ago for apartment buildings, you basically end up with an exact match for those 3 meters in ESPM. So we would have one connected gas meter and one connected electric meter for the common spaces and systems, and one connected meter that represents the aggregated electricity use from all the tenants in the building. And that way, the whole building energy use is now captured in ESPM. So this is what the entries for connected gas and electric meters look like in ESPM. Every data update will be timestamped, and the start and end dates that you see here are the ones that appear on your utility bills. So there's a direct correspondence there between the two. Now with live meters in ESPM, there are some limitations in terms of what can and cannot be connected. With BC Hydro, for example, you can connect all meters that are on a commercial rate. So those mostly will be the common area meters. But you can connect individual meters on residential rates unless you have 5 or more of these in your building. Then you can connect an aggregate meter, just like we saw earlier. But still, even in those cases, there are workarounds for the meters that cannot be connected. You know, if you have a single residential meter, you can use your MyHydro account to export the data and then upload it to ESPM. In cases where you have less than 5 tenant meters on residential rates, you can still request aggregated data from BC Hydro. The only difference here is it won't be a live connection. It'll just be a data file that you can manually upload to ESPM. So there's a little bit more work involved in that case. But I would say for most apartment buildings, way more often than not, we are able to set up live meters for all the energy use. With Fortis BC, the scenarios are somewhat similar. So like BC Hydro, you can connect meters on commercial rates, but there are no options to get automated uploads in ESPM for residential meters. So unlike BC Hydro, there is no aggregation offered as far as I know. If you happen to have a multi-unit residential building where tenants have their own gas meters, you're left having to use one of the first 2 data collection methods that we talked about earlier. So, you either get bills from the tenants or online utility account exports, and then you can add that data manually to ESPM. With that said, in residential buildings with gas use, it's way more frequent to see just the one common gas meter, and this meter will be on a commercial rate. So you are able at the end of the day to connect it to Fortis BC through ESPM. So that's really in a nutshell how you would go about collecting your energy data by setting up your buildings and meters in ESPM. And from here, it becomes a matter of maintaining your data and keeping it up to date. So now by having these live meters in ESPM, monitoring energy use on an ongoing basis has become way more practical. Now to review your entire portfolio's energy summary, all you need to do is log into your ESPM account and you'll be presented with a dashboard that has each building's energy used by fuel and the calculated EUI for each site. But beyond this landing-based dashboard, ESPM also has built-in reports for things like tracking your building's emissions or assessing the data quality of your portfolio. And you can also build your own reports. And each report, you can have up to 50 metrics in it. So to recap, we looked at 3 options for energy data collection as it relates to benchmarking. And out of the 3, I think it's fair to say that ESPM offers the best advantages, but it also has the highest entry barrier. In some scenarios, ESPM is really the only viable option to get your entire building's energy use. Think of an apartment building with, say, 50 or more units. Trying to work with utility bills or online utility accounts is just not feasible, especially for something that you have to do on an ongoing basis. So it's really important to overcome that initial hump that comes with learning how to use ESPM. And on that note, we at BCM-PHA realize the value of ESPM and provide support to the nonprofit housing sector with benchmarking implementation as a free service. And this applies regardless of whether you are a member of our organization or not. As long as you are a nonprofit housing provider in BC, we are here to support you fully with this process. And that can be anywhere from guiding you through it to setting up your entire portfolio in ESPM from scratch. We can also create custom dashboards of your ESPM data that can help you assess your portfolio's energy performance much better. And you'll see snippets of these dashboards when we look next at some of the key benefits of energy benchmarking. At the end, I'll share how you can reach us for questions or if you want to get started on the process right away. So far, we've looked at the how of energy benchmarking, and next I'm going to spend a couple of minutes to talk about the why. The first reason you should energy benchmark is to maximize your resources. In the nonprofit housing sector, budgets are often stretched thin. So making well-informed strategic investments and building upgrades is really key here. And you need the right data to do that. One way to maximize the impact of your spending is to be aware of which properties are the worst energy performers and costing you the most energy-wise. So this is similar to the example that we saw earlier when we looked at the difference between energy and EUI. Say you have 2 buildings with similar size and heating systems that are due for a boiler upgrade. But one of the buildings has a much higher energy use intensity, which you now know because you benchmarked your portfolio. So the energy savings that would materialize from focusing your resources on that building would be more significant. After you complete a retrofit at one of your buildings, and the building has been running with the new system or equipment for some time, now you can look at the energy data and compare the use pre and post retrofit. So here we're talking energy and dollar savings, and this will give you a more solid estimate for the return on the investment that you made with the retrofit. And again, because you benchmark the building in ESPM and tracked its energy use throughout the pre and post implementation periods, the data we need is readily available to do this type of analysis, and visit it if needed on a regular basis. Another key advantage of benchmarking your buildings in ESPM is the seamless greenhouse gas emissions tracking that the platform enables. For many societies that we work with, GHG reductions is one of the driving factors for the retrofits. For some organizations, there might even be a long-term decarbonization plan for their portfolio. So ESPM is handy that way in the sense that it can generate a report for your building's GHG emissions based on the energy data and fuel type breakdown. Another advantage of tracking your energy in ESPM is the ability to spot inefficiencies relatively early. If you have all your building's energy use tracked in ESPM, you can log in every bidding cycle and review the trends in your building's charts to see if any meters have gone sideways. And you can do this monthly, you can do it quarterly, you can do it annually for the entire portfolio. So that way you can identify which properties are showing irregularities from previous years. And these could be in the form of increased use or drops in energy consumption. And last but not least, another good reason to benchmark your buildings in ESPM is to meet energy and emissions reporting requirements. Especially if you have residential buildings in Vancouver that are 50,000 square feet or above. We just wrapped up the reporting to the city for this year for buildings 100,000 square feet or more. And the tool of choice for this reporting was ESPM. And right now there's a reporting bylaw in Vancouver only, but I won't be surprised if other municipalities also start rolling out similar requirements over the next few years. So with energy benchmarking, we see a lot of value for the sector. But we also know that you all have enough on your plates on a day-to-day basis. So as an organization, the more we can do to help you utilize the ESPM for benchmarking and energy tracking, the better for the sector on the long run. So please reach out to us either by emailing benchmarking@bcmpha.ca, or you can fill a service request on our new benchmarking website. And really, to get you started, all we need is for you to fill and sign, a permission, a form that gives us permission to set up your ESPM account, and to send us a copy of your most recent utility bills for the common meters only. So yeah, that's it for me. Thank you for letting me share my thoughts on energy benchmarking, and I really hope it sparked some ideas for you. And now it's my pleasure to pass the presentation on to our guest speaker, Glenn Hawking from Affordable Housing Societies, so he can share his thoughts on this topic.
Colette, thanks very much. Every time I hear Colette speak, I learn so much. So thanks for sharing all that. I continue to learn. So at Affordable Housing Societies, we started working on this probably a little over a year ago. And, to be quite honest, when we got started, I had deer in headlights. I didn't know too much about all this. And the more we get into it, I'm really developing a passion around this because I can see the power of doing this. And all of us get our utility bills every month. They come in, you sign off on them to get them paid, and then they go into a big filing cabinet and get put away. And they're rich in data and information that I can speak personally about, that we weren't doing anything with that information. And now we are, and it's just so valuable. I'll just go over some of the benefits to affordable housing societies around starting to benchmark. So we operate a portfolio of over 60 buildings. And so it's always hard for us to identify, priorities where we need to invest valuable resources and limited resources at times. So what benchmarking has done for us, it helps identify emission hotspots. And so now I know, like with no uncertainty, what polluters we have in our portfolio. And we can start focusing and develop programs to reduce the emissions of those particular properties. But before that, like I said, we had no idea. So knowing your hotspots in your portfolio is very, very beneficial to us. The second thing, when we implement different strategies, we think we're doing the right thing, but we don't know the impact of what we're doing when it comes to greenhouse gas emissions. So driving cost savings is huge. So just as an example, if we switch an old boiler that's been around for 20 plus years into put in high efficiency boilers, I want to know whether that was a good investment or not. So with benchmarking, we can, within a year, you can see a real trend because a lot of this data is seasonal. We suggest you look at the data over the year and do a really good comparison just to see the benefits of different projects that you've implemented. And just as an example, we put a new boiler, high efficiency boiler in one of our buildings over a year ago. Well, today I can look at it and we know we're saving about $5,000 a year in energy costs. So like I said, now with benchmarking, before I had no idea. I could go through all the bills and manually do it, I guess, but with 60 plus buildings, it could be very onerous. But now I can just go to the website and get that information very quickly. Another benefit, it supports regulatory compliance. Colette mentioned that in Vancouver, they've implemented for June 2025, buildings over 100,000 square feet. We now have to report greenhouse gas emissions. And we're easily able to do that this year. Next year, it drops down to 50,000 square feet buildings. And so we're going to have to report more buildings next year. And I'm assuming the next year after that, I think all of our buildings will have to be reported in. But benchmarking enables us to meet those regulatory requirements. Another thing we're using this data for is, it's just another piece of data that we can bring into our strategic planning process. And when you have all your hotspots identified and stuff, you can prioritize work that really needs to be done and that will reap some benefits from. Another one I put down here, it strengthens stakeholder confidence. I've been in so many discussions with different stakeholders, and even while I'm talking to them in my office, I bring up the website where we're benchmarking, and right away it gives stakeholders a level of confidence that, hey, this is important to these guys, and it just puts us at another playing field with some of our stakeholders. And some of those stakeholders also, when it comes to funding requests, a lot of funding now is tied to greenhouse gas emissions. And just having your benchmarking all in place, it helps that you can measure if someone's giving you funding, for whatever reason, but one of the outcomes of the funding is tied to a reduction of greenhouse gases. Well, because we're benchmarking, we can now measure that. And just one last thing. It enables us to do comparison and best practices, and even we can look outside our own organization, but even within our organization, I've got the ability now to compare 2 or 3 buildings in similar size, similar structure, and why is one emitting so much greenhouse gases where others aren't and they're the same size? But it gives me the ability now to drill in and find out why. So I'm in this tool all the time. The more I'm in it, it's more valuable for me. And I'm always talking with BC MPHA, if we could just change this report and report on this information, or change the reporting period or whatever. They're very accommodating. And I just wanted to say in ending, number one, BCNPHA and led by Khaled, they're so supportive, and I just can't recommend enough to everyone. It's such a great experience to start down this path and this journey. I know the presentation today might seem overwhelming if you haven't started yet, but I just encourage you to jump in and partner up with BCNPHA and just get started, and you'll start learning about all this. And like I said, when you can start really embracing it in your operation, you'll really learn the value of getting started. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Glenn. Yeah, thanks, Glenn. Thank you so much for that. Sorry, I'm back for some key takeaways to wrap up here. So yeah, with the energy benchmarking, it plays a key role in guiding building retrofit decisions. And just like Glenn said, it's highly recommended that you incorporate that piece of data within your processes. We looked also at Energy Star Portfolio Manager, which I hope you can see that it is the preferred tool for energy benchmarking. But yes, it does come with a steep learning curve. But that's why we're here to help. So BCMPHA offers a free energy benchmarking service. And really the whole purpose for us is to empower the nonprofit housing sector with this important piece of information. Thank you for listening, and I think we can move on to questions now.
Great, thank you, Khaled. I didn't notice any questions come up in the chat throughout the presentation. I just want to invite anyone, if anyone has a question ready to go right now, now's your chance. Otherwise, I have some that are ready to go, but happy to hear from the audience first.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Perfect. So we operate in Kamloops currently and some of the surrounding communities. We operate stock from, I guess it would be, geez, we just talked about this the other day, 56 or the 60s anyway to 2022 new construction and some in development. One of the things I didn't like hearing, which is nobody's fault on this call, is the 4-story exception to getting support. We have 3-story facilities rocking energy efficiency from 2000. Is there a way to get exceptions passed for that service?
Sorry, can you so is your question with regards to benchmarking or rebates? Sorry if I missed that.
That's okay. You said one of the key players in this at the very beginning slides has a hard 4-story exception. Anything less than that, you're not going to get funding for. So my question is there exceptions made for buildings that we know, excuse me, we know are inefficient, but happen to be 3 stories because that was what was done in the 2000s?
Okay, maybe I should let one of our energy managers or specialists take that one on.
Yep, I can chime in here. So, excuse me, the 4-story requirement is just for buildings that would take part in the BC Retrofit Accelerator. And that's a program that AMA and BCMPHA have partnered with to help deliver those services to buildings that meet those requirements. But with that being said, we do offer benchmarking, level 1 ASHRAE type energy audits, support through the entire retrofit process to all building types under the BCMPHA umbrella. So we're more than happy to connect with you and chat about how we can help support those buildings that don't fall into the BC Retrofit Accelerator category, we're more than
So there's
capable
been
and happy to.
no success made on getting an exception made, even when they have like a BC Housing operating agreement. It's 4 or nothing.
I might pass that over to BC Retrofit Accelerator head Edward to just speak on that.
Yeah. Hey, Sean.
Hey, how's it going,
so-
Edward? Long time no
yeah.
talk.
Yeah, nice to see you. Yeah. Basically, like at BC Nonprofit, we work with different funders, and one program that we're working with is the BCRA. And so we have support available to help with those projects. There's also to note 4-story requirement. There's also a square footage. It's either 4 stories or it's a certain footprint area that could be included in that program. But I think what Harrison was mentioning and trying to mention was that those services, if we're not eligible to support you through the BCRA program, we'll have another program at BC Nonprofit that we could support you with almost identical services. It would just come in a slightly different package. But so I think there's going to be a complete level of support no matter your building type.
And we are in the process of getting our level 2 audit results, probably within the next 3 months, ordered through BC Housing. So, and we're also due for natural gas boiler replacements and all sorts of fun. And it happens to be only 3 stories. So I was disappointed right off the start, even though everything else was great. I was like, uh-oh, we're in trouble. Thank you for that.
There's always support available. Thank you.
Yeah. My next question is for Glenn. Are you still there, Glenn?
I am, yeah.
So thank you for throwing in your experience with a portfolio that size. That's obviously pretty darn massive. Do you operate outside of the Lower Mainland at all, or just in the Lower Mainland?
Yeah, just in the Lower Mainland. We a lot of our properties are in in Vancouver, but we do go out as far east as Chilliwack.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my next question may or may not be as relevant, but I'm going to ask it to you anyway. In the areas we operate, it seems like if we go to electrical systems without doing a deep energy retrofit, our operating costs go through the roof. And I'm wondering, with your efforts and your work, have you had to tie a deep energy retrofit into it to get savings, or are you just blessed with a different climate than us and it makes it work?
Yeah, a great question. And just getting started benchmarking, it enables you to start doing things, and even just some small projects, not even deep retrofit. I'm amazed at some of the benefits we're already seeing. Like I said, just a simple thing, a fair size thing is switching out a boiler. We're not doing a complete envelope or anything with new windows and everything else, but just even those tiny projects, we're starting to see results. And it's encouraging to see your investment, reaping some benefits for the organization. And like I said, we haven't even done, we do have projects scheduled coming up where we're doing some really deep retrofits. So it's going to be interesting to see the results from there. But yeah, like I said, even the small things we're doing, it does make a difference.
That's really encouraging. And I guess, Glenn, you also said something that I missed the first bit about. You said next year, if you have a building at 50,000 square feet or larger, you have to do reporting on your greenhouse gas emissions. The part I missed was, who is that reporting for? Who's requiring it?
Yeah, Khaled, you could probably expand on this, but right now this program is just in Vancouver, the city of Vancouver.
Okay.
But we suspect that it's going to be widespread, shortly in other municipalities.
That's correct. Yeah.
So I don't need to worry about it yet, but it's coming. That's what I'm translating that answer to.
Yeah, don't be surprised when it comes. You've been warned.
I won't now. I just hope it doesn't start at 50,000 square feet. I hope they pick something a little bigger to start with.
So Sean, it started last year at 100,000 square feet, and it seems like that's kind of been the trend with these regulations. Setting an initial threshold has been 100,000 square feet.
Yeah, you got to start somewhere. That does make sense. And I took lots of pictures of your slides, but I don't have questions on them. I just took copies. So yeah, that's it for me. So if anyone else has any burning questions, I'll be quiet now.
Thanks, Sean. And we will be sharing out a recording of the slide as well. So you'll, if you wanted any of the extra additional audio that goes with those slides. We're just about done, but if anyone has a last minute burning question, otherwise we will be sharing contacts. So if there's anything that comes up afterwards, please feel free to reach out to any of the folks at BCMPHA or at ALMA to support you with this. And yeah, I thank you again, Sean, for bringing up some really great questions. And I think recognizing what's happening in the city of Vancouver is a really great case study, and we can learn from that if and when these regulations expand onwards, and we can bring partners like Glenn back to the forefront, and we can learn from all of the learnings that take place in these changes. All right, well, I'm not seeing anyone come forward. Well, I'll let we can wrap it up today. Thank you everyone again for making the time, and I hope everyone has a great rest of your day and a wonderful weekend.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.
Thanks, Chanel. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. I'm always the last to leave the room, just in case people have questions. I'm gonna close the door behind me.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Vivian.
Have a great
Bye.
weekend.
Yeah.
Thanks, Courtney.
Thanks.
Thanks, Chanel. Yeah, take care.
Thank you. I'm trying to click out.
Oh, no worries. I always just like I'm the last person to leave in case
No,
people
makes
have
sense.
questions.
Thank you. I was just trying
But
to-
I'll end it now for the both of
Yeah,
us.
awesome.
Okay,
Thanks.
thanks.
Bye-bye.